Hey everybody, this is John from Decklist with episode 12, match number 5, our final match in this league. Started out pretty hot, kind of cooled off the last couple matches, so hopefully we'll be able to get the 3-2. As always, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below, as we aim to become the most informative lightning bolt based modern channel on YouTube, primarily focusing on Burn, but also doing Is It Phoenix and Mono Red Phoenix. So, this league's been a good example of the best of times and worst of times for Burn. So, match number 1, played against Elves. Elves is still a pretty decent matchup. They can win, but they're really hard to fight through. Blaze Effects, Eidolon is a good card in the matchup. The 4-color Snow, Dirtly mid-range deck had some of the good aspects of decks to beat Burn, things like Tarmogoyf and stuff, but was a little slow and dirtily, and doesn't have enough disruption. Burn kind of preys on those decks. Blue-White Control is usually a pretty decent matchup, but our opponent's particular card choices came back to hit us. Spell Snare, which not all Blue-White decks play, hit us with an Eidolon and hit a relevant Searing Blaze. Then game number 2, I kept a bit of a greedy hand and got suitably punished for it. And then match number 4 showed why Eldrazi kind of wipes the floor with Burn. Game number 1, they played Chalice on 1. I kept a bit of a greedy hand as well, which obviously sometimes you do with Burn. We kept a 1-lander with like 4 relevant spells and then got like half of them immediately locked out by a Chalice. And then game number 2, they did nothing for the first 3 turns and still ended up winning the game. So this is another hand. So we already have one more land than we want. I'm going to keep it just to see if these 4 land hands change as a result of Sunbaked Canopy. So, normally I would throw this hand back, but I want to see how many of these 4 land hands with 1 Sunbaked Canyon work out. Probably not many, but anything with more than 3 lands in the past has been automatic mulligan. So, mulliganing this far down tends to lead me to believe they're either on Tron or Dredge, potentially. So, Tron would be a decent matchup. Dredge would be a terrible matchup. I guess it could also technically be Bridgevine, but they kind of fit in the same category as Dredge for me. Maybe Infect? Definitely feels like Infect now. This is another deck that seems to have picked up steam since yeah, looks like they're just gonna pierce me. Pierce me, bro. Which is annoying, because... Yep, presuming you're just gonna pierce, right? Yeah. Alright. Play out Canyon, that way I have something to do with my mana this turn. Yeah, definitely looks like Infect. So we're going to presume they're on Infect. Bring in all the paths. Some consideration, because some versions... didn't mean to hit that one. Meant to cool up this. Like, I could be completely wrong. They just could have, like, an entirely non-functional hand and not have been some other deck and trying to really represent. But no, I'm seeing a white splash out of this, some of these Infect decks. I'm failing to see the exact point of the white splash in this build. It's outside of... oh, Teferi Time Raveler. Okay, that makes some amount of sense, I suppose. So, 4 of those. Bring in Skull Cracks makes sense. Cut a couple Eidolons on the draw. And Boros Charms, I guess. Could bring in Searing Blood, but they have so many pump spells and such that even something like Mutagenic Growth counters it. So this hand's pretty good. We've got early pressure, got a couple removal spells. I was trying to figure out what the white splash was for, and then I still have to Fairy Time Raveler, and I'm like, yeah, that makes some amount of sense against a removal heavy deck, doesn't it? Hopefully they don't have an Infector on one. Hopefully this is just Noble Hierarch. I mean, Hierarch isn't good for us to see, but it's still better than like the threat of a turn 2 kill with a Glistener Elf. This means their protection spells are going to be a lot more live. Especially with a card like Scale Up in their hand now. That was really dumb on my part. I needed to get a white mana there. They're going to get to draw a bunch of spells, which is annoying. So given their lack of mana, I don't think they're going to be able to kill us on the backswing. So I think I'm just incentivized to do this. Alright, got a little bit lucky there. My punt didn't come back to bite us. Definitely some little errors there came back to bite us. Generally don't keep four-landers, especially once the London Mulligan rule goes into place. There's no real payoff for it. Like I said, the only reason I kept the four-lander in game number 1 there of this last match was simply to see if Sunbaked Canyon really kind of influences the different hands you can keep. Some ways it did, some ways it didn't. Infect, this is the third time we've played Infect since Modern Horizons came out. Matchup still seems pretty decent. A lot of what we're doing is relevant against them. Yeah, Burn's in a really weird place in the format right now. Like, losing to blue-white kind of bites. Like, that's a matchup normally that I would say we're pretty favored against. It's also a reason why in my latest version I've gone away from Exquisite Firecraft. Maybe that was a mistake. I guess only time will tell. Yeah, because my latest build of what I would normally play and on my sideboarding guide on the Patreon page, I kept the green splash in part to have 4 cards to bring in against blue-white control because I cut the Exquisite Firecrafts. Because I want to cut all 4 Searing Blazes, so I had the 2 Skull Cracks and the 2 Cinder Vines to bring in. I don't know. Cinder Vines to me is losing more and more value as these blue-white decks play Teferi Time Raveler. Beyond that, really don't know much else to say. I upped the amount of Graveyard Hate because of the Bridgevine decks, and we haven't even seen any in this league, ironically. Just comparing this build to the build that I'm like is considered my optimal build right now. Yeah, this version seems fine. I mean, we're not going to see a ton of Leyline Sanctities. That's just not going to happen. Burn's not prevalent enough or powerful enough in the format right now to see a bunch of ley lines, although they are getting reprinted in M20, spoiler alert. But, I mean, Burn's still solid. I mean, this is like our third 3-2 finish in the league, and with a couple of things breaking the right way, we could have easily have gone 4-1 in a couple different leagues. So, some of it was some mistakes on my part, greedy keeps. Some of it was our opponents drawing like their 1 of or 2 of, particular card that was relevant. So, sometimes it's decisions point being is there's always decisions you can make that could have changed the outcome of the game, potentially. So always, even when your opponent's top decking well, even when your opponent's playing extremely well, even if your opponent is literally outplaying you like my blue-white opponent kind of did, always look for those little decisions that could have influenced the match and try to maximize those decisions. That's the best thing you can do to improve as a Burn player once you get the general mechanics, the sequencing, the hands you keep, that kind of stuff down. The best way to maximize a deck like Burn is those little 1 or 2 point decisions. Those can swing the outcomes of matches, like giving yourself the best chance to win. Like, Lightning Helix our opponent, try to drop them to 4, give us a chance to top deck a Boros Charm for a win. Modern's a lot about little decisions at one point in the game and how you build your deck more than outplaying your opponent at every turn of the thing. So what frustrates a lot of really good standard players about Modern is generally there are very few decks in which you truly outplay your opponent. Sequencing is important. Spell whatever. Spell sequencing is important, but you very rarely can outplay your opponent in Modern. That's why a lot of good Magic players don't like the Modern format. It's more about the deck you register and the sideboard cards you have in your list and the matchups you get than outplaying your opponent. It's a part of Modern. Kind of something you got to get used to. I don't know enough about Legacy if Legacy is the similar way, but we will definitely be starting to do some Legacy burn content as well. But that's kind of my rant on the Modern format and where burn is at. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you like what you're seeing on the channel, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below.